Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Having a good personality means more than you think when it comes to looking for a job. Hello and welcome to Advanced Studio Classroom. I am your host, Joe, and today we are talking about being more business savvy, and we're looking specifically about job hiring. We have a 2-day business article, first talking about the hiring process, and then the second day of this article, we're going to be talking about the side hustle, building a product rather than a service. Now, today, I am joined by two amazing panelists. They're some of my favorites, and it's my first time having you all together, so this is also kind of fun. So let me just introduce here. We have Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca.
I'm really happy to be here, and it's a really fun combo we have for you today. Joe, me, and the third.
I'm Linda. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here.
This is also kind of nice because, Rebecca is also, I think of you as being very business savvy.
Well, thank you. That's really kind.
And, we've had Rebecca on for a lot of our business articles, finance articles, anything that deals with a lot of technical information. We usually drag Rebecca out of the... Are you on the 5th floor or the 6th floor? I can't remember.
The 5th floor.
5th floor. We drag you down from the 5th floor and have you out here, so it's really good to have you. And, of course, Linda is one of our editors for Let's Talk in English, and she's also one of the voices of Advanced. And so I think this is really nice to get you guys together. But I want to look, first of all, at this word savvy. So, Rebecca, what does savvy mean?
Well, usually when we say someone is savvy in something, so savvy is basically you're very good at something or you have practical understanding and knowledge about something. We use this a lot when we talk about technology. We say someone is computer savvy. It means he or she is very good on the computer. Or tech savvy, that means you're really good with technology, with tech devices. And of course, we can say someone is business savvy as well. Someone is very good at business.
Right. So often it seems like it's a bit more about technical knowledge. I don't think someone can be for instance, fashion savvy.
I mean, technically you could use it in that way, but we often don't. Yeah, it usually has to do something with business or tech or, yeah.
Right.
Computers.
It's something a bit more practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what would you say is something that you are very, savvy in?
I think I'm mobile phone savvy. I'm very good on my mobile phone. Maybe I'm not so good on computers or other devices, but I've really mastered my phone.
Oh, so now we're moving away from computer savvy to smartphone savvy.
That's right.
Oh, I almost wonder if that would be a very common pairing as we're going forward, because it's one thing to be good at computers and another to be good at smartphones and tablets and all of that.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, if you're describing a small child and they are very, mobile phone savvy or tablet savvy, then maybe in that case, because I didn't expect them to be as savvy as they were. So, but as you get older, maybe it's something that is a given.
Right. And it's kind of interesting because when we say someone's tech savvy, I do sort of feel like we're broadly talking about sort of smartphones, tablets, and that sort of thing. Not necessarily that you're an engineer or something like that.
That's true.
But we're not talking about tech savvy. We're talking about being business savvy, making good business decisions, financial decisions, that sort of thing. And when we talk about this topic, we were talking about business savvy, but actually I feel like it's more about being people savvy.
Yeah, that's really true. We're going to talk about people skills today in this article. So I think this article should be renamed Becoming More People Savvy.
Oh,
Maybe we can let our listeners think about that as we go on this topic, whether this title is the best title we could have come up with for this article.
Uh-oh. I'm going to challenge the editor. Oh, Brandon's going to come down here. All right. Well, let's get our first reading for today's article. Becoming more business savvy. Learn the latest on job hiring and how to invest in products rather than services. When hiring managers say you're not a cultural fit, Here's what they really mean. It happens all the time. You, the job seeker, have an interview or phone screen and feel it went great. But the next day, you get the word you're not moving forward in the recruiting process because the hiring manager says you're not a cultural fit. At which point, you think, what exactly does that mean? And why don't they just tell me what I did wrong? Well, here's the harsh truth. Well, we're going to have to wait on that harsh truth. And this is so weird hearing my own voice while doing the readings and the leading. But that's okay. I think I sound good. Marco in the back works magic on those voices. Mm-hmm. So we have this situation where a hiring manager says you're not a cultural fit. And what do you think a cultural fit might mean, Linda?
Well, not being able to blend in with the company culture or what they have there, like with the people.
Right. And that's actually a good point here. You know, oftentimes when we're using cultural and culture in this kind of setting, we're not talking about like a national sort of culture. We're talking about what Linda mentioned here, specifically a business culture.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But here, maybe we can start with a national culture to get people understanding what is cultural fit. Like, for example, maybe I'm trying to go to another country and they don't use chopsticks, for example. Maybe they eat with their hands. And that is something that culturally I'm not used to. So then I wouldn't really fit in the eating habits of that particular country.
Right.
And if we move that into company culture, we can also say that maybe a certain company acts in a certain way. For example, like people at that company is very aggressive. For example, they always dress in business suits and they always want to hit their sales targets.
Right.
And that's kind of like that company's culture. But another company might have a culture that is much more laid back, not as aggressive, much more easygoing.
Right.
So these are all different kinds of cultures. Like when we think about countries having different cultures, companies also have different cultures as well.
Right. And so here we get into a situation, and you can imagine you're going and trying to find a job, you're a job seeker, and you have an interview or a phone screen. And this phone screen is just basically a phone interview where the company's just trying to sort of screen or weed out kind of the candidate pool. There are a lot of people.
Right. They're trying to assess your abilities, you know, your suitability at the company.
Right. And so basically, rather than having everybody come in, you do this phone call. And so you might feel, hey, it went pretty well, but then you get the word you're not moving forward in the recruiting process. And Rebecca, what is get the word?
You might receive the message. Like you might hear back from someone. We say get the word.
Right. So you hear back and then, actually, you're not a cultural fit. And it has those quotation marks around it.
Right. So you might not know what that really means because it's a very general term.
Right.
Like specifically, like, why don't I fit into this, you know, company culture, this company?
It's such a vague kind of response. And I like the quotes here where it's sort of like, what in the world does it mean? And so here, of course, it's saying, you know, you might be thinking, what does that mean? And why don't they just tell me what I did wrong? And wouldn't that be wonderful if you could just get that kind of direct feedback, Rebecca?
Actually, in the past, when I was applying for certain jobs and got certain feedback from companies, I would love to hear from those companies what I did wrong or what was the reason they didn't hire you. But 99% of the time, the HR manager or the recruiter usually doesn't give you an exact answer. They use these very vague terms like cultural fit or it just was not what we're looking for. So it leaves you kind of confused.
Right. You have no idea how to build or, you know, improve.
Exactly. And so when you don't get that feedback, you won't be able to do better on the next interview. You know, you can't learn from those mistakes.
Right. And I think, Rebecca, you make such a good point where most of them, once they tell you you're not a fit, they're not going to communicate with you. They're not going to tell you how you can improve or do better on the next interview. It's kind of a shame.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's really not very helpful for a person looking for a job. But I think a lot of times practice makes better. As you go to more and more interviews, like you start to kind of understand which kind of companies or which types of jobs you might be more suitable for. But I think so much of it is just going out there in trial and error.
Right. I like how you say practice makes better, because in English we often say practice makes perfect.
Right.
But then I've heard sometimes people say, well, practice makes permanent.
That's
Not
true.
necessarily perfect. So it's really interesting.
Right,
That's a good way to
right.
rephrase that. Now we're going to go into our next reading talking about this hiring trinity. You missed the mark on the hiring trinity. Hiring managers evaluate candidates on 3 things: personality, how you interact and communicate professionally, aptitude, your capacity to change and adapt so you work the way the company wants you to, experience, skills you have gained by doing similar work previously. While that might seem obvious, here's what many job seekers don't realize. Those first 2 are more important than the third. It doesn't matter if you're the most qualified from an experience standpoint. If the hiring manager doesn't feel your personality and aptitude will mesh with their leadership style and the personalities of the existing team, they won't be comfortable bringing you on board. Now more than ever, you need to be highly self-aware of how your communication style is perceived by others. So you missed the mark. Now, miss the mark is another good phrase to know, Linda.
It is, and it means that you didn't achieve what you set out to do, or you didn't get your intended result.
And so miss the mark, it could be that, you're far away from the intended result or even kind of close, but not quite there.
Exactly. You didn't hit it on the head.
Hit it on the head. Oh, and then we have this hiring trinity. And Rebecca, what's trinity?
Trinity is an interesting word. It's basically a group of 3 things or people, and we use it a lot when we're talking about religion, in particular in Christianity. We say the Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity.
And the Holy Trinity, of course, is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So in Christian circles and also in countries of a Christian history, you might hear this word Trinity.
Right. And so we think of this sort of like 3 things that go together almost perfectly.
Right. Here it's the hiring trinity. And usually when we use this word trinity, there's like power or,
Right.
some sort of reverence for these major 3 things.
Major 3 things. And so real quick, Rebecca, what are these 3 things?
The first one is personality. So it's basically like your personal traits, your characteristics, and how you interact with other people. And the second one is aptitude. Aptitude is basically, here it explains it as your capacity to change and adapt.
Right.
So it's kind of like about how you learn, whether you can learn something quickly. We use that a lot for exams in North America.
Right, like
aptitude
tests,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, we often, when we were children or when we were in high school, we had to take aptitude tests.
I was never apt for anything. My aptitude tests were wasted.
But tests are not really for everybody anyway. And then the third thing in the Trinity here is experience. That's actual job experience you have learned, skills you have already learned and accumulated through your career.
And I think most of us, we tend to think about experience as being the most important.
Exactly. Like what you've done, what you've experienced, what you can bring to the job, all the knowledge and experience that you can bring.
Right. And because often when we're applying for jobs, they'll say, oh, you need so many years of experience. I always hated just out of college where it's like you need a college degree and 4 years of job experience or
Right.
something.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that eliminates me.
I don't know how I'm supposed to get that. But apparently, Rebecca, that's not the most important thing. It's not just about experience.
Yeah. Here it says in many interviews, the first 2 is more important. So your personality and aptitude is actually more important in you passing that interview.
Right, which is just, I know, it's really interesting. So it says here, it doesn't matter if you're the most qualified from an experience standpoint.
Right, and that's standpoint is just point of view. So from the experience, like point of view or perspective, you'd think that, the most qualified person, who has the most experience would be the best. But actually, that's not how hiring managers see things.
See things always. Yeah, and it's true because if it were just about experience, it would always just be, okay, who has the most experience, and that person would get it.
That's right. But a lot of the time, it's not the most experienced person that gets the job.
So what's another factor then, Rebecca?
Well, the other factors is basically whether your personality and aptitude will work well, or here we use the word mesh, with their leadership style.
Mesh is such an interesting word. I like this word of this mesh with their leadership style.
Yes, like if you can go together, like if it can blend together, right? You can just seamlessly, join this company without major conflict.
Right. And that would be the goal, right? You don't want to join a company and then cause major conflict. I also think of the word like gel. Like if you and the manager can gel together is a kind of similar phrase.
But this is really, really interesting. As I was reading this, I was thinking a lot of it is whether your personality and aptitude meshes with the hiring manager.
Right,
Whether
specifically
the person who is hiring you. Because that's the first point of contact you have with the company. So it really depends on whether your aptitude and personality can get along with the hiring manager.
Right. It's so interesting. And actually, I remember a few months back, Rebecca, I think you were on our article. We were talking about AI and like hiring processes. Do you remember that?
Right. And we were saying in the article, I think, if my memory serves me right, that AI basically takes out a lot of the human element in interviews, because AI actually makes your application more based on experience than personality and aptitude.
Right. And I think, even with that in mind, and even with so many online applications, that personality aspect is still kind of important, because once you get through those gates of experience, it's going to come down to personality.
Right. So when, I guess they use AI and maybe just those things to weed out certain candidates, so that, if you have a large number of candidates, you can focus on,
a smaller
number.
Right. And, personality still really, really matters. And so here I think there's this interesting point of now more than ever, you need to be highly self-aware of how your communication style is perceived by others. So oftentimes we feel like, oh, I'm actually speaking very clearly or directly. And others would say, oh, you're kind of harsh or a little rough around the edges.
Right. So being self-aware is being able to understand how other people view, not just how you view yourself,
right,
but how you're perceived. And, people perceive things in different ways. So you have to be aware of those things, how you come off.
Oh, yeah. And how you come off is another good idea. It's not just about like, oh, I think I'm really nice and really friendly.
That's really true. And when I was reading this, I was thinking a good way for you to become more self-aware, because a lot of times we think we are self-aware, but maybe we are not as self-aware as we think. So a really good way is to go ask your close friends or family to give you honest feedback. But the key word here is honest.
Right.
They need to be honest with you in how you communicate, because I remembered in the past, I told some of my good friends about my interview experiences. They gave me some really good, honest feedback as I described the situation. And some of that feedback was what I didn't really want to hear, but it was very helpful going forward.
That's that harsh truth coming back again.
Yes.
Oof.
They're often things that we don't want to hear, but we need to in order to improve.
And I think that's something to be said of like having a mock interview, having kind of a practice with somebody to get feedback. That's really good. Now, we are moving on to our next reading, which is about rejection. Rejection is hard, but they're likely doing you a favor. Being in a job where you don't naturally mesh with the management and the team is a terrible situation. It can bring back those horrible, insecure school days. You'll feel isolated, have constant doubt, and will likely be super stressed. Trying to fit in when you don't isn't worth it. We've all seen enough movies about this to know the answer is to let it go and find your tribe. With so many companies out there, you need to identify and get hired by one that appreciates your unique combination of personality, aptitude, and experience. Rebecca, rejection is never easy.
No, rejection is hard when we're told we're not suitable for a certain job, or sometimes rejection also happens in relationships. I mean, it's very hurtful at the time.
Right. And here, the reason you're being rejected isn't necessarily experience or you being unqualified. There seems to be this issue with that meshing word we talked about.
Right. It's just that you don't fit. Like it won't work well having you as an employee. And, nobody likes rejection.
No one wants to hear that.
Yeah. But here, it might be doing you a favor. Like they might be doing a favor by rejecting you, and you can learn from that.
Right. And so a lot of this paragraph deals with how exactly they're doing you a favor. And I like where this starts out. It can bring back some horrible memories, Rebecca.
Yeah, horrible memories of what? It talks about horrible memories of school days. And in particular, we go on to talk about high school. Because in high school, sometimes it's the hardest time of your life because we all want to be popular and to fit in and have people like us. But when you're in school, I would think especially in high school, a lot of people just don't fit in.
Right. We're all kind of growing and changing. And so pretty much nobody fits in except for, those handful of people. I think of, the sports people that are usually kind of
the
popular.
jocks,
the jocks, the cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Right. Those are people we typically think of in American culture as fitting in and not having these sort of horrible, insecure school days.
Right. But they probably feel like they don't fit in either, You don't know, just because maybe they have a group that they belong to.
Right. And here when they're talking about that insecurity, it's mentioning about feeling kind of isolated or, having constant doubt and being super stressed. And I think that that's kind of true. When you don't fit, there's that constant almost tension.
That's true. I kind of think of a fish out of water. We have the idiom in English when we say he or she is a fish out of water in something. And a fish out of water is, of course, a fish's natural environment should be in water, whether it's the ocean or a river. But if a fish is on land, the fish will never feel secure or happy because it needs water.
Right.
So when you don't fit
Floundering.
in, you're basically like a fish on land. You just, no matter how hard you try, you just don't feel this is your environment.
Right. And that's an interesting point, too, because apparently trying to fit in isn't really a solution either, Linda.
Right. Here it says trying to fit in when you don't isn't worth it. All right. So if you try to make yourself fit into somewhere that that doesn't fit your personality, then maybe you have to be fake, and that doesn't do any good for you.
Right. I guess kind of a question I'd have here is if I'm interviewing for a place, how do I know if that company culture and my personality are going to mesh? What do I do in a situation like that, Rebecca?
To be really honest, I think with one interview, it's really hard to see whether your personality and who you are fits with a company. A much better way is to go through several interviews because many companies have several interviews, not just one. Maybe it'd be 3 or 4.
Right.
And a lot of companies these days even let you work 1 day or 2 days at the company. Some companies, especially tech companies, let you do that. So you can actually go in the company and work for 1 or 2 days, and then they evaluate you and you evaluate them. I think that's a really great way. But of course, not every job has that option.
Right.
So a lot of times we won't know until we're on the job. But like here in Asia, a lot of companies have a 3-month trial period. So if you work there for 3 months, actually, I don't even think you need 3 months. Probably
you
work there for
a week or two.
A week. You'll probably know whether this is the place for me. And I would just say go for it, take the job. And if you're there for a week and you really don't think it's working out, just be honest and leave.
Oh, I think this is a really fair point. And this doesn't come up in the article at all, but I think that that's really good advice where you have to be honest with yourself and not try to what we say, bend over backwards to make it work.
Right. Don't, do things that are not you.
Right. And talking about not being you, continues on. We've all seen enough movies about this to know the answer is to let it go. So let that company go and find your tribe. What is find your tribe?
So here, tribe has different meanings, but here it just means find a group, find a place that shares your interests, shares your goals and your beliefs somewhere where you feel like you belong.
Right. Now, this usage of tribe is rather special because normally we think about like Aboriginal groups and that sort of thing. And so this is sort of a usage that's a bit more popular, I think, in kind of business circles. But I think some people actually can kind of find this offensive. I don't know. Have you?
Find your tribe, yeah. I think the word is not meant to be offensive but I think the word, when you think about it, the first picture that comes into your head is usually like an Aboriginal tribe. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how Aboriginal people might feel about the use of this word in this context. But tribe has become a very popular word in pop culture.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's like the cool way of saying find your group. We don't say find your group. It's like, here's my tribe. You see this on social media all the time. Like, like maybe there's a girls' gathering and then someone will post, oh, me and my tribe or something like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we see that a lot on social media.
I'm not social media savvy, I suppose. Oh, another usage.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, now, I think that this is important advice because actually there are a lot of companies out there for you to choose from.
Right. So you need to identify and get hired by the one that appreciates your unique combination of personality, aptitude, and experience.
Right. And I know that that can feel like hard advice, especially when you're looking for a job, because it seems like, okay, yes, there are many companies out there, but none of them are talking to me really.
That's true. I think finding a job is a lot like dating because you have to get to know each other.
And the first date, I mean, the first interview is also kind of awkward.
Yeah, the first interview is like a first date almost. But I think it gives you hope if you see like looking for a job like dating. Because a lot of times the first person you date or the second person you date might not be the right one. So you just have to keep trying until you meet a suitable person.
Right.
And that's the same thing with finding a job. A lot of times you're not going to get your dream job right off the bat. So you might have to work a little harder.
Actually, I feel like your analogy kind of fits because, you know, for instance, like dating, you know, it's like, it's not necessarily like, oh, you have so much money or you have this or what factors. There are all these many factors that go into making a decision.
Exactly. And so you have to think about all of those things also when you're considering a job.
So, Rebecca, I guess maybe we'll have to bring you back on for dating advice as well as interview advice.
Maybe I'm not the most perfect person. You're probably a better example because you're happily married.
I am happily married.
So you can give us advice on how to become happily married.
I married it through that first date, first interview.
Or how to be dating savvy.
Dating savvy.
Dating savvy.
Yet again.
Yeah. We need more articles on that.
Oh, my. Well, this has been our first day of our business article, and tomorrow we're going to go into talking about creating a product rather than a service. So don't miss it. I'm Joe.
Rebecca.
Linda.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye.